If you take human stem cells and put them into the brain of a mouse, that mouse does end up smarter, and that is concerning. Because if you take quail stem cells and put them into the brain of a chicken, the chicken ends up acting like a quail. It'll even take on their song behaviors. So transplanting things like brain organoids or stem cells as a whole into developing animals or adult animals really does lead us to question what it means to be human. One of the things that we have to consider in science is whether or not the ends justify the means. So if something is excessively cruel, it better have some really, really good applications, and let's talk about some of those that are going on right now. As well as research like creating monkeys with transgenic lines from multiple other parents. You might ask yourself, where exactly can this help in science? Well, this particular research could help with strokes. It could also help us understand human brain development, and it could end up with better models that we can use in science if they can be transgenic. One of the things that creates big problems, especially in medicine, is not having a cohort that has multiple different genetic backgrounds. Essentially, if you're testing a treatment or medication on just one mouse who's highly inbred without a lot of different variation, you're testing a tiny part of the population. Having multiple cell lines could allow us to see how different genetics can be interplayed before we end up with human trials. Another cool and weird application for this is creating parthenogenic mice, or mice that come from two fathers or two mothers. I'm not exactly sure of the applications in this kind of research. I know it could mean cutting out genes that could potentially do harm to your child. For example, if you have two recessive copies of a devastating disease between the mother and the father, you could cut those genes out altogether. There's, of course, the application for same-sex parents. And you can, of course, do that with two mothers. This research involved taking mouse oocytes, so their eggs, and taking the parts of them that look more like a male, using transgenic lines that have portions of the imprinted genes just cut out, because you do need to get some genes from the mother and the father, and then using that to make mice, and they actually grew up healthy. Another possibly more ethical and perhaps more useful is taking mice that have been genetically altered to have genetic diabetes and using rat stem cells that can take over as their healthy pancreas. While this does usually happen pretty early in development, it could lead to making mini pancreases and mini livers so that we can cure people who have damage to those, either genetic or through lifestyle. This also has major applications for things like MS, where your body attacks your neural system, which cannot heal itself. The use of stem cells could provide an alternative. Now, your body will reject materials that have been put into you as an adult if it's not you. This is because during development, before you're born, your body has to learn what is self. So you're in a relatively sterile environment. The only thing that's present is your mother's cells and your cells. Your body is learning that those belong to you. This is why we can do these things for embryos, but it's much more complicated to do them for adults. And it's the reason why we can take stem cell lines from very different animals and put them in the same organism. The brain has the additional benefit of being an immune-privileged area of the body, which really means that if stuff is in there, it's not super likely to reject. In the case of humans, there has been a lot of talk about thymus transplants, so thymus being the part of your body where your immune system is incubated. The other application for making transgenic lines with things like monkeys is that monkeys are a lot more closely related to us. So if you were to take an adult stem cells and grow your organs in, say, a chimpanzee, it's going to be a lot more like you than if you were to try to grow it in, say, a pig. The need for replacement organs is great, and not only is that research presently being conducted, but somebody has received the first human organ grown inside of that animal already. There is a big concern about whether or not we are uplifting animals, or even if we grew human stem cells inside of something like a monkey, if they could potentially get into the brain and alter their intelligence, which I'm not sure matters all that much because we've already transplanted human brain organoids into monkeys. This is a situation where the potential for harm is, yes, great, but nothing is going to stop progress. As long as there are people who want this technology and could use it, it's going to happen. Even if it does not primarily happen in the United States, someone is going to do it. Part of me does want to see if we can make hyper-intelligent pets. I know that's not ethical, and I'm not going to do it, but I kind of want to know what happens.